to Narrative and Beyond with Michael Adinkombi. I still have my... Welcome to Narrative and Beyond. And I remain your host on this platform. Today, I have a very good friend of mine. I've known her for decades, for close to 3 decades now. And she's been consistent in what she does. Now, she started out studying, or she read economics in her first degree, but right now she's a counselor, licensed counselor and therapist in the UK. And I believe that we're going to have a very nice time within the short time we'll have with her. Please meet my guest, Funmi Oni. Funmi, you can please introduce yourself.
Well, it's my pleasure really to be on this platform with you, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. And like you said, yes. In fact, I was going down memory lane, and I recall that the first time I met you was at the health center in 1998.
That's true.
And I was like, wow, how time flies.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm grateful. So I am Funmi. I used to be Funmi Adimukuya, now Funmi Oni. Married, got 2 teen boys. And it was economics. The journey started in that field, and I've since crossed over to working in the mental health space.
Oh.
How did I get there?
Yeah, how did you get there? Let's just continue. Don't worry, it's a conversation. So it's a conversation.
Yeah.
So feel free to share.
Interestingly, I didn't, in my wildest imagination, think I was going to become a therapist. Unfortunately, I was one of those people who, went to uni. I didn't really have a plan in my head. Thankfully, I got admission to study economics. But on graduating, I felt like a fish out of water. I didn't know what exactly I was doing. But God, in His infinite mercies, Scripture says, I think somewhere in Proverbs, that we plan in our hearts, but God ultimately guides and directs. And I think that's just true about my story. I met with some beautiful ladies in Daystar who invited me to become part of the volunteering team. That's Pastor Nike's pet baby at the time. That is now grown in leaps and bounds, the Real Woman Foundation. So just shortly after uni, I volunteered there for close to a year. And that's when the penny dropped. Like, I had a light bulb moment in that time. And I felt I actually enjoyed doing what I'm doing. I love the heart that Pastor Nike had towards women. But I traveled that same year to the UK, and God orchestrated that whilst I was working within the local authorities, then the education sector, I had an opportunity to go back to school. And it was kind of like landed on my lap. And I felt I like working with people. I like helping people out. Why not get the skills? And that's how in 2006, I went back to school to study counseling. And I guess, like they say, the rest is history.
Okay. I recall that experience that you mentioned at Real Woman Foundation, or Real Woman Foundation, as it's called in Lagos, Nigeria. Were there events or happenings or cases that you managed or that you were part of contributing to while working there then that actually shaped your understanding of this trajectory in your career?
Yeah. A few of the things that I saw resonated with me, right? So when I was a little girl, was abused, sexually abused as a little girl. So working with these young women who some had babies, some their parents, the narrative in Nigeria back in the days. I don't know if it's still the same now. If you're pregnant and you're not married, your parents will throw you out. So these were the kind of people that Pastor Nick would bring into the home and provide shelter.
That's Pastor Nick right?
Adeyemi.
Okay, all right.
Yes, Pastor Nick Adeyemi.
Of this Christian Center.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I can't tell my story without referencing her because she has been pivotal, in me becoming who I am. So seeing these young women who, without those opportunities, may never have had an opportunity to move on in life. And I felt within myself that this could have been my story. This could have been me. So it ignited a passion and a desire in my heart to just want to help people. And so and I also realized that there were a lot of things that I couldn't place my finger on. And I don't know if you would recall when we were in uni, you were one of the people that would constantly support and encourage me. We would do a lot of things together back in the day. But I felt there was a puzzle, there was something missing, So the experiences, I see somebody like you having lots of desire, passion, aspiration to do things. But for me, it was missing. I couldn't place my finger on it. So going into the foundation, seeing women, I thought, there's something about these young women that kind of resonated with me. So when I went to the UK and I did my counseling, I think first and foremost, it was for myself, because that was when I realized I had issues with low self-esteem. I had issues with confidence. I had lots of things that I hadn't realized and dealt with, So studying counseling opened my mind up to those realities. And that's what made me channel my energy to support people, because I just felt, if not for Pastor Nika and the ladies at the foundation, and God gave me the opportunity, I wouldn't be where I am. How many people have had similar experiences as well in their lives, that they just need somebody to listen to, somebody to encourage them, So that's kind of what spurred me.
Awesome. I know we're still going to bring you back on this show, because there's so much to explore. But I'd like to ask, now you had, a bitter experience as a child, based on that abuse that you mentioned. And that would take me to asking a question about safeguarding of children for those who are raising kids in this society. Things are worse now. There are more predators around now in the society everywhere. What would you suggest now as a professional as the necessary safeguarding principles of that parents should live by, ensuring that their children are safe in a society that has gone south, so to say?
Right. That's a really, really good question. Well, in the 90s, thankfully, there's been a lot of research into what we know as trauma, right? Now, trauma is a Greek word. The root word of trauma is Greek, and it means wound, right? And we attribute the wound, right, not physical wound now, to emotional wound. It's a it's quite distressing. So when you have an experience that is distressing, when you have an experience that affects you in such a way that it can begin to affect your daily functioning, right? Even though these experiences happen in childhood, because back in the day, we live in an environment where you don't talk about these things because of shame. You don't talk about this because
of stigma.
You feel you'll be ignored or dismissed or even blamed. Right. So a lot of people don't talk about certain things that have happened. Now, trauma that happened to children is called ACEs. So we call ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. And a lot of children are going around because of these different exposures that they've had in early childhood that for some kids, I mean, I've worked with quite a number of people over the years now. And one of the recurring things that I've heard is that when those things were happening, they didn't think it was a bad thing. Yeah, some kids did not realize that what was happening to them was bad until
damaging to them.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I'll share this with you. I possibly may not have shared with you before. When I had those exposures as a little girl, what it did to me, it awakened some sensations in my body that I had no business knowing as a child. And then I had access to materials that I shouldn't have had access to.
Adult materials.
Books. Yeah. There was a particular book that I found in my house, and I'm not even sure my dad knew that book was there. As far back as when I was about 10 years old, this book explicitly described what happened in a sexual relationship with same sex.
Wow.
10. I'm 47 now.
Wow.
So I would sit, because the things you see and hear are gateways to your mind, right? That's right. Psychotherapy would say what you see, hear, experience goes into your mind, you reflect on it or meditate on it, and it informs your behavior and actions. Now, the Bible would say, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. The Bible also says we need to guide our hearts with all diligence because out of it flows
the issues of life.
Yeah. What we see, experience informs how we think and how we behave. So what I had experienced, what I had read began to inform the things that I would think about. Right? And of course, it became huge that I began to shy away from everything and anything that would make me think in a completely different way. So the question to what is it that parents can do? We cannot afford to be careless with our children or negligent. We can't afford to neglect the way. Now, for some, I need to would say they need to go and get money. They need to work. Of course, you have to provide the basic needs of basic needs of clothing, shelter, and maybe some sense of security.
Food, yes,
for your children. But emotional needs are also important, right? Nobody can look after your children like you do. there are different things you can do. For some, you might need to, if you feel right because of your career, you have to get somebody else to come in and look after your children. Put some, well, what do we call it now? CCTV cameras in your house. Ask questions. Observe behavior change in your children. Yeah, because one of the pointers that would help you to recognize that something is not quite right with your child is a change in behavior. Some kids can just suddenly become angry. They can suddenly become irritable. Don't just ignore them. Don't say that they're being rude. There's something they're trying to tell you. A child who has been really lovely, peaceful, that is now acting rude, don't say it's because of hormones, because I've heard some parents who say it's down to hormonal change. Not all the time. Not all the time. So be observant. Be very, very observant. Ask and sit down and have conversations with your children. Don't trust everybody and anybody around your children. Because oftentimes abuse is caused by the people who are the most familiar to a child.
That's true.
It's really strangers. They are the uncles, your brothers, your family friend, your neighbors. They are the perpetrators.
Well, I know that's a very difficult conversation to have based on your own, past experience. But I'd like to ask a question. Now, as a therapist, how do you help people who are going through different trauma in life? Mental illness is a big deal now. And I think the awareness has actually increased all over the world, even in Africa now, that someone can actually be depressed and still be jumping around and looking lively as if everything is fine with them, whereas they're already in depression. How do we? Okay, let me rephrase my question. How do we spot someone who is depressed, say within family setting? You mentioned for kids. When there is behavioral alteration, it means that something is wrong, or it might be a pointer to the fact that something is wrong, right? That's in the child. Now, for adults, how do you spot when someone has entered depression? Someone actually spoke to me not quite long, saying that she entered depression and the husband was not even aware, even when she was saying that she's already depressed. The husband was saying, "What do you mean by that?" So how do we spot when someone is going through depression and they are not sharing it? Number one. Number two, whether amongst our family members or our friends, and how can we help such a person, especially from the point of view of someone who is not a professional? How do we provide support to someone who is going through depression after spotting it? One thing is to spot it, and that is to be able to provide support for them.
Okay, so you've asked two questions in one.
Yes.
All right. How do you support? How do you spot? Right. Okay. So there's a difference between anxiety and depression. Okay. I'm actually doing a research. I'm working on a research on some of the influences, some of the different constructs or factors that leads to depression. One is the ACEs that we've just talked about, trauma, right? And trauma could be, it's a wide range. So it could be illness, long-term illness can cause trauma, right? Loss of income can cause trauma. Relocation can cause trauma. You leaving the known for the unknown. It can cause then, you've been involved in an accident that can cause trauma. But depression, anxiety, low self-esteem can cause trauma. Can lead to depression. And with low self-esteem, it's easily masked. People who are suffering from low self-esteem may not really, show. So you may not really know that I had low self-esteem back in the day. Maybe I don't know. How can you spot that? Now, if someone, okay, let me explain depression. Now, depression, there are different levels of depression, right? So you have mild depression, you have low depression, moderate depression, and you can have severe depression. Now, someone who is severely depressed would most likely be diagnosed as clinically depressed.
Mm.
Okay. Someone who has mild depression may experience moments of temporary sadness that they can't really place their fingers on. But within 3 to 6 weeks, they're able to kind of get themselves out of that space and life goes on.
Mm.
And I believe a lot of us do experience those moments where you just feel low, you don't really have the mood, you're not in the mood to do things, right? So you're not really excited about things, but then after a while, it shifts and you're back to normal. But someone who is experiencing moderate to severe, there's just nothing you will do. It's like this heavy cloud is just constant. They feel very sad. They don't have a motivation to do anything. Now, for those ones, you would know that they are depressed. They can't hide it. So one of the signs for those are if that person is a bubbly person, outgoing, extrovert, you just suddenly find that in all the different functions, they're not there.
You have withdrawn.
They ignore calls. They don't respond to your text messages. They won't let you come and visit them. They'll tell you they're okay. So they withdraw from social activities. Right. So that's one of the signs of somebody who is depressed. And you cannot live with someone who is clinically depressed and not know. However, someone who is going through moderate to mild depression, they may still mask how they feel. They still function, right? So you might still think that they're highly functioning individuals because they're still doing all the different things that they're doing. But there's this innate sadness that they feel within themselves that they can't place a finger on. So you can live with somebody that way and not know if you're not observant, especially because you're living in this world where everybody's just busy. And then if you have children, oh gosh, that's even more difficult to spot because you try and appear to do all the different things that you do, with your kids, but there's just something eating away on your inside that makes you feel. And for those people, how can you help them? We have to listen to people because sometimes they drop hints in conversations, right? So we really need to listen to each other. I can ask you, hey, Mike, how are you doing? And you say, I'm fine. And then I've moved on. But if I sit with you and say, how are you doing? Tell me what's going on. It means that I'm ready to listen to you. Okay. And then trust is equally important. Do we have relationships that we trust in? The people, you can be in a crowd and feel lonely.
That's right.
Yeah. You can be in a crowd and still feel like because there's nobody in your immediate circle that you feel comfortable enough to share and talk with. But you would talk about every other thing. Oh, the clothes I bought yesterday. Oh, the market was this. The transportation was bad. The weather is really cold. But the things that really matter to you, you cannot share because you feel you need to hide. Maybe you're struggling with your bills, but everybody thinks that you've got it together. How is it that, for somebody who people are looking up to, that's something I'm going to reference Pastor Nike again quickly. I love that woman. The first time I would ever meet her, we were going through a phase in the foundation. There were some challenges that they were going through. But she just sat me down. There were no airs about her. She didn't have any need to pretend. And that's one of the things that we do. We pretend to be who we're not. So that when we are going through things, we can't share with people because we've given people a false impression of who we really are. Yeah. So there's just a whole lot of stuff that we as individuals really need to sit down with ourselves and just be true. Be true to yourself. I hope I was able to answer that question.
I know there's so much, to unbundle as far as that kind of question is concerned. It's deeper than I know, and because we have very short time to really pick your brain on some of those things. If someone wants to go into your line of work, what would be your advice to them? How would I all know if I'm cut out to be a counselor or a therapist, as it's called?
Well, with any profession, the question would be, what would I be happy to do even if I don't get paid for it? Right. So that would be your litmus test. What would I do even if I'm not paid? So that's your first driver isn't money. Then the other thing with my profession, are you compassionate? You have to be compassionate. You have to be patient. You have to be able to put aside your own agenda, right? And be able to step into somebody else's shoes and listen to them. So primarily, you must be a really good listener. And that's important, that you're able to see beyond what somebody is saying, because they say that 80% of communication is nonverbal, right? So you must be able to pick up on the nonverbal cues. And that's important. To be a counselor or a psychotherapist, it's really important that you are able to listen, you're patient, and you're ready to support somebody else other than yourself. In terms of qualifications, it's quite easy to become a counselor. My first degree was economics. When I started out, I did my first level 2 in counseling skills, and then I did my level 3 and then level 4. Level 4 is the equivalent of your first year in university in counseling. And over the years, I've just built on that because it's an evolving sector. There's just always new research and new ways of doing things. So I started out as a person-centered counselor. And then I added CBT, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy, to it, solution-focused. And then about 10 years later, I became a relationship therapist. So I went back again to study. And that's another area that I think is really important with relationship. You can't just advise people based on your own background and what you think is right. Yeah, there are ways to do it because lots of people have broken people's homes because of wrong advice. From good intention, a good place, but you've given advice based on your own circumstance and situation, which may not necessarily serve somebody else.
That's true. That's true. Okay. Let me just ask maybe one question more. So I know you have another session very soon to go into. How can parents safeguard their children from drug use or drug abuse? And from gangs? And when it comes to gangs, joining of gangs, and especially for teenagers, it's not just about in the UK, it's everywhere in the world. That's the truth. It's in Nigeria, it's in Africa. So from your professional point of view, and from, of course, cases you've managed and all of that, how can parents manage or safeguard their children from drug abuse, and those who have found that their children are, are using drugs or abusing drugs, or even addictions like masturbation and all of those things that teenagers engage in, how can parents help them? Let me now flip it to the other side, that from the parent point of view. Teenagers, because we have teenagers, in fact, I have some young people who watch our podcast, and I'm sure that that's one of the questions. How can they keep themselves away from, some of these vices, addictions, drug abuse? The internet is on fire right now with all manners of negativism or negativity, as it were, and negative influences. Of course, the positives are there as well. The advent of AI has brought in another dimension to it, So from the point of view of parents and from the point of view of young people, teenagers, youth, how can they manage all these challenges, that are affecting mental health, actually, or mental or well-being generally in this time and age?
You've asked a really tough question. And as you're asking and you're wrapping the question in my head, I'm thinking, oh, okay, right. When I work with individuals, my first question is, what is the root cause? Yeah, what is the root cause? Kids who are going into gangs or using substances, it's a symptom, oftentimes, of something else that is going on with them, right? They might feel that they don't have a sense of belonging, and that's one of the primary desires of every human being, to want to belong. Now, a child who doesn't have that sense of belonging in a family may seek it elsewhere. Okay? A child who is not confident in themselves would be easily swayed when they're outside. Don't forget that the percentage of time a child spends at home is a smaller fraction compared to the time they spend outside.
That's right.
Yeah, because a child who's gone to school, by 7 o'clock, they're out of the house. They don't get back until like 3, 4. That's the most active part of their day. For parents, and I speak to myself here, the question is, how much time do I spend with my child? What's the relationship dynamics that I have with my child? Have I developed a child or brought up a child who has succeeded in developing two personalities? One at home, where they do all the things they know their parents would want them to do, and then they're a completely different child outside. Am I able to spot when my child is beginning to change, when they are different, a difference in their behavior? When I'm at home with them, am I at home but not at home? Because oftentimes we are at home but we are not present. We have 1,000,001 other things we're doing, so we're not actively engaging with our children. So that's from the parents' perspective. With the young people's perspective, I think it's just important for you to know who you are. Your identity is important so that you're not easily swayed. Because the relationship that you think you're building outside only lasts for a short period of time. Unfortunately, I've heard of kids who've gone to uni and in their first year of uni have gotten involved with narcotics, and it's destabilized them. They've developed mental health illnesses because it's readily available, no matter where you are in the world, no matter how much control that is put in place
by the government.
Yeah. So it's understanding who you are as a person. Do you really need these substances to make you feel as a human being? If you've experienced trauma, if you're having issues with yourself, please seek help. Please seek help. Incidentally, myself and my husband, we're working on an app that would help young people or anybody to is there to support their mental health, right? So it's we have different what would I call us? There are different plans on the app, access to different techniques that they can use, and it's faith-based as well.
That's fantastic.
Right. So it's research-based that people would be able to use, whether it's CBT that you can do on your own, self-help that you can use that can support you. Speak to people, find people that you trust. So if there's anything that you're concerned about, even if you've started using these things, you can always come out of it. If it's behavior patterns that you've developed that is not healthy, you can find a way. If it's, masturbation, some people are even saying that it's okay. I mean, there are lots of different people, voices out there that are saying that at least you're not sleeping with anybody. So it's just yourself. So, it's your body. So you can do whatever. Not so. Not so, because it will create lots of problems and baggages later on in life.
That's correct. Okay, thank you very much. I know you are in high demand. You are in high demand in Europe, especially for your counseling work. So I know that we're going to have a part 2 of interviewing of this podcast interview with you, because we still have a lot to still speak about, so, and we're unable to do that today because, you have sessions that you need to go into. Thank you, Funmi, for speaking out and for speaking clearly. You've spoken clearly with simplicity, but there's a lot that you have unbundled within the short time that we have. I want to say thank you to you,
thank you
for coming on this platform essentially to speak to us. We're going to have part 2. I'm very sure of that, so that we can have. There are so many questions I've written down that I've not been able to ask, but I'm going to ask you in part 2. Do you have any other thing you want to say so that we can draw the curtain finally?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I mean, it's been a really, really big privilege, being on the podcast. And I'm just hoping and trusting that, everyone that listens to the podcast, not just this one, because I mean, I've listened to some of the other ones that you've done. Faith comes by hearing, right? Hearing and hearing again. The Bible talks about renewing our mind, so if you don't listen, sometimes you don't know that there's a need for you to do things differently. So I appreciate you. Thank you for the work you're doing. And I thank you. I'll come back again.
Okay. All right. Till we come to your screen again. This is Narrative and Beyond with Michael Adekombi. And then I'm going to bring Funmi Oni back. And then we would ask more questions about mental health issues and how we can safeguard ourselves, especially with what is going on in our world today. Thank you, Funmi, once again. And thank you, viewers. And have a very good one. Till I see you again. Bye-bye for now. Welcome back to Narrative and Beyond with Michael Adekombi. I still have my